check this. There are 3 anime people have told me I need to watch if I am a true fan of shonen. Gintama, One Piece, Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. Those always come up. Now Gintama and One Piece are like 1,000 or so episodes, so I'm not gonna start with those. I'm gonna start with Jojo's and see how it is. I just watched the first like 2 episodes. Uh I don't even know what to say. I don't want to give an opinion on it yet. I mean, I'm not really liking it, but we'll see. Hopefully, it gets better. And there are too many people talking about this, so I really just want to understand the hype. All right, so we'll see how it goes. I'm going to watch these episodes, and I will get back to finish this video. Good grief. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Small Couch Reviews. It's your boy Sam going solo this time, and we are very close to each other. Yes, the couch did not get significantly smaller than it already was. I'm actually using my phone. The main camera is all out of sorts right now, but we're going to make do because I'm very excited to talk about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It is indeed bizarre, and it is indeed good. I get it. I have to admit I was wrong. I understand the hype. I understand the fandom. Even though I understand it's a very specific type of fandom. Because the show's not for everyone. I'm going to say that outright. It's not for everyone. But when you get into it and you really start to like it, like you're addicted, bro. Seriously. But yeah, so I'm going to stay off jump. This is not going to be my review. It's kind of just going to be my reaction to what I've seen so far. At the time of this recording, I'm in part 5 of the series, Golden Wind. And there's one more part after this called Stone Ocean. So after I finish all of that, I'm going to do a full review of the whole series. Okay. So, for those who don't know, or not aware of what I'm talking about, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is about the Joestar family. It spans generations of this family as they fight evil in their day. So, it starts in the late 1800s with our first guy, Jonathan, and then it goes to present day. And each main character is named JoJo. It's like their nickname. Yeah, let's start, man. Now, parts 3, 4, and 5, I'm probably going to do all together because they're very similar, which is both good and bad. But we'll get to that. But let's start with part 1, y'all, because this is honestly this is the struggle. So part 1 is about, I think it's 14 episodes long. And if it took me 6 months to get to where I am now, right, probably 2.5 months was spent watching part 1. 2.5 months watching those episodes just because it's so boring. It's so bad. Like, I would start it and I would fall asleep, and then I would start it and fall asleep, and then I'd forget and I have to go back and rewatch. It's not a good story. And honestly, when I was watching it, I was like, I don't understand why people... That's when I was like, I don't understand why people like this show. But I powered through it. I got through those 14 episodes, and then I got to the part that's much better. Part 2 has its flaws, but it's leagues better than part 1, right? Oh, hey, sorry. Quick correction. So, my homegirl's in the other room, and apparently I'm being loud. And I was being loud and wrong. Part 1 is 9 episodes, not 14. 9. That's actually worse. It took me that long to get through 9 episodes of a series. Yeah, it's not good, but I just wanted to make that correction. All right, let's get back to it. Okay, so the plot of part 1, it starts with our first JoJo, Jonathan Joestar, right? He is a rich British man, he's a teen when we meet him, rich British teenager, and aristocrat. And his father comes into debt to a certain man. This man has a son named Dio, and because of this debt, Jonathan's father ends up adopting Dio. So Dio and Jonathan become, adoptive brothers, right? The thing is, Dio is a complete dick. He is just mean to his brother, to Jonathan, for no reason, like none at all. He is like he's really like the reverse Flash of pettiness. So quickly for those who don't know, because this is something that's funny to me, the Reverse Flash is a super villain in comic books who has all of the powers of, the Flash, the really fast guy, except more. He can run faster than the speed of sound. He has genius level intellect. He can actually travel through time. And what does he do with all these abilities? He goes back to when the Flash was in 6th grade and pushes him down the steps. He does stuff like that. All these powers, and he antagonizes this person like that. That's kind of how Dio is. He'll bide his time to steal Jonathan's girl and make Jonathan watch as he kisses his girl and be like, "Ha! I got your girlfriend's first kiss."
No, you thought your first kiss would be Jojo, but it was I, Dio.
Like, he does stuff like that. He eventually graduates to being very violent when he finds a mask that basically turns him into a vampire. Dio kills their father. Jonathan decides Dio is just unforgivable. He kissed his girlfriend. He beat him in a boxing match at school and embarrassed him in front of his friends. And now he's killed his father and become a, blood-sucking vampire. So, yeah, so I would recommend that in part 1, you watch the first 2 episodes, so you see the dynamic between Jonathan and Dio. You see how Dio becomes what he is. Then maybe watch, I think it's like the 4th or 5th episode. See, one of those 2 will explain the power he gets, which isn't really going to be all that important, but you can watch it if you want, just to understand how he fights this thing. And then go to the last episode of part 1 when you see how their resolution happens. Because I promise you, it's completely forgettable. This part was terrible. Then you get to part 2. So we're going to give part 1 a fail, right? Or an unsatisfactory. Jonathan is he's not even a cool main character. He's whiny. He's like a bit preppy. He's an annoying character. You're not really going to like him. He's too much of a goody two-shoes, and he doesn't do anything cool. We're going to pass on that, okay? Then we get to part 2. Part 2 takes place in the 1930s, and we meet Jonathan's grandson, Joseph, who is the complete opposite and is probably my favorite of the Jojo's. So most people would probably say that part 2 is great when you meet when you meet Joseph, because it's something he does when he interacts with police officers who are basically being racist to this kid in New York City. And while that part is cool, he kind of beats them up with a Coke bottle. I actually fell in love with Joseph as a character later in that episode when he shows he's a different kind of hero. So there's a vampire, all right? Dio is a vampire. There are other vampires that have come out of the woodwork now, and Joseph is fighting them just like his grandfather fought them, right? And there's one that shows up at this restaurant, and it's a friend that he knows. And Joseph is like, "Hey, do I see fangs? I don't think I see your reflection in this mirror." It's like, "Oh, and how are you moving like that?" Right? He's just talking to him. And before the vampire even responds, what does Joseph do? He pulls out the strap and he airs everything out in a crowded restaurant. The dude does not care, yo. He is about killing what he needs to kill. And I was like, yeah, I can rock with this guy. A lot in part 2, my opinion. But Joseph is a much more refreshing character. He was, again, a lot cooler. And he has this thing where it's just funny to me, where he tells his enemy what they're going to say before they say it.
Now you'll say that's impossible. That's impossible.
I don't know. That it's a quirk he has that he keeps, and I love it. I love it every time he does it. But yeah, the actual villains in this arc aren't all that great, and they're oddly sexual. That's a thing. That's something else about JoJo's. This entire show is oddly sexual. And I don't mean like, they're just throwing like fan service, one way or the other. I mean like characters do things that are just weird. Like in this show, you have people like walking up and licking the sweat off your face, or like just like posing at you before they fight.
It's not currently in use, so I thought I'd bring it along. What a surprise. That's the distinct tang of a liar. Right, Giorno Giovanna?
It's odd, which is probably why it gets its name Bizarre. But anyway, so yeah, part 2, Joseph's fight against these pillar men. It's more exciting than part 1, but the plot itself, because I didn't really care about these pillar men, these villains. It was just something to watch. So we're gonna give part 2 a satisfactory. Now I'm gonna tell you parts 3, part 4 especially, and part 5 are all God tier. Spectacular, amazing. Okay, let's get that out the way. So, part 3 introduces the power of stands. Parts 3, 4, and 5 are where you get most of the memes of the show. JoJo is that show where if it's an anime meme and you don't know where it's from JoJo's. Yeah, so it introduces the stands, which are basically these, it's a manifestation of like your soul. So each one is different, and only a person who has a stand can see another person's stand. So they call them stand users. So regular people cannot see like this giant spirit standing next to you that's doing stuff and giving you powers, but another stand user can see it, right? So our third JoJo in part 3 is Jotaro. And, he is probably the closest thing to the typical shonen protagonist that you meet. He has the look, he has the attitude, he has the strength and the power, and, he's gonna have the character arc where he grows and all that stuff. It's him. So Dio has returned in part 3. And he has, I believe, he's somehow poisoned. Like, the reason they're going after him is because he's evil. But he does do something to Jotaro's mother, who is Joseph's daughter. And that's the reason they set out against him. But the reason's not actually important. Just Dio's evil, they go after him, right? Now, I think this is the longest part that I've seen. It's about 50-something episodes. And it is very formulaic. Parts 3, 4, and 5 all follow the same formula. The main characters, because their group, they run into a stand user. All right? They don't know who the stand user is, but somehow the stand user uses their power. Their power causes trouble, and then the group has to figure out how to beat this stand user to continue on their journey. Rinse and repeat. That's all it is. They run into stand user after stand user after stand user. Now, you would think that would get boring and that would be, just not a great narrative device at all. But let me ask you this. When you watch G Gundam, did you ever get tired of hearing Domon Kashu say, "This hand of mine is burning red"? Did ya? So the thing with this is, it's always fun watching these stand users or trying to figure out who the stand user is. The writer of this series, Hirohiki Araki, I wanted to make sure I got his name. The creator, he has made it so that every stand is like very unique and has a power that, you wouldn't think you would like it's just very creative, right? So it's really cool to see them deal with this problem. And the really interesting thing, I think, that most of us fans are watching for, it's like, yeah, how are you going to get out of this? Because something unlike typical shonen, like let's say Dragon Ball, for example, which I love, but we know how that's going to end every time. They fight somebody strong, then Goku will come and save the day. How does he save the day? he finds a new level of power and there's a new transformation that he unlocks. He transforms, gets more power, beats the guy, right? And I mean, not to even just go on. That's how a lot of anime work. Like, you just level up. In this show, that actually doesn't happen that often. The stand users that we meet, our main characters, they keep the same power and the same power level throughout the whole show, right? So it's just they have to use their stands in new and interesting ways each time. Like, for example, one person has a stand that basically like lets Joseph stand. His is called Hermit Purple, and it creates like these vines that come out of his hands. And they're not used for fighting. It's like a reconnaissance type stand, right? So it's not used to fight, but he also can, since it's actual vines, he can use it to like swing from buildings. He can use it to grab onto somebody and pull them away. So it's like, they have to think of new ways to use their stands, and it's always cool. Like Jotaro's in part 3, his stand Star Platinum is very fast and very strong. But that's not going to beat somebody like who can freeze time or something like that, right? So he has to think of new ways to beat this person. And watching them come up with these ways is very, very cool. Although it does lead me to something. For those who have watched the show, have you noticed that everybody in this show knows everything about everything?
That's it! Narancia's stand detects and follows its victim's respiration. It's the exact same way mosquitoes feed on the blood of their victims, by detecting the carbon dioxide they give off when they breathe.
This is a form of divination. It's similar to ancient Jewish merchants who once observed sunspots to predict economic prospects.
We're traveling 80 kilometers an hour right about now, meaning that the wind is blowing around us at approximately 20 kilometers a second, and the wind chill factor drops 1 degree Celsius for every meter of wind speed. In layman's terms, we're all freezing to death at minus 20 degrees Celsius.
Like, what the heck? What education system do these people have that they know all of this stuff just off the top of their heads? Anyway, I'm rambling. So part 3, they go on a journey from Japan to Egypt, and they have to, and they can't fly because Dio stopped them from flying. But, they meet stand users along the way. They have to fight them. And then they eventually get to Dio, who Jotaro confronts. Now let's get to part 4. So all I want to say about part 4 is Kira. Now, in the beginning, it follows the same formula as part 3, like I said. All of these follow. Meet a stand user, find him, beat him, right? But this one takes place entirely in one city, Morio. And our new JoJo is Josuke. And his power is very similar to Jotaro's, except instead of, in addition to being super fast and super strong, his stand can also heal other people and other things, right? So that's a really cool thing because he, again, finds a way to use that power in new and different ways depending on who he's fighting. In the second half of part 4, it switches up where they find out there's a serial killer. And it's a serial killer who had been killing before he even found out he had this stand power, right? And now that he has this stand power, he's upped his ante. But he's a very, very interesting character. And I'm like, the narrative choice here, or the narrative, I should say, here, is spectacular, man. Like, I really have to commend them on making a story that you really care about. This dude, his name is Kira, the serial killer. He is somebody who is basically like, his whole thing is he wants to live a quiet life while committing these atrocities. So even though he's very skilled and very smart and all that, he has a medium level job. When he competes in tournaments, he never wins. He always just he stays at the bronze level. He never draws attention to himself or anything. He just lives a quiet life. And, he's just, he's Joe everybody. Like, he's just 1 in a million lost in a crowd. But he kills the wrong person, and the JoJo gang get onto him. So he has to start defending himself. And his stand is OP. That, honestly, was probably the stand where I was like, I don't know how they're going to win. He has a power that is literally, it seems unbeatable. It literally does. It's like, I don't know how you're going to do this. So watching that whole thing with Kira, choice. And then, we get to part 5, where part 5 takes place, I think, only a couple years. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have mentioned this all, but I said part 1 was the 1800s. Part 2 was, JoJo fighting those pillar people, was the 30s. Part 3, when it was Jotaro, going from Japan to Egypt, that's in the late 80s. And then in the early 2000s is where part 3 and part 4 take place, right? I think part 3 is like 1999 and part 4, I'm getting all this confused, sorry. Part 4 with Josuke is in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then part 5 that I'm on now, Golden Wind, that takes place in 2001, and it's in Italy. Part 5, our JoJo is named Giorno, and he turns out to be Dio's son. But he's not like Dio. He's actually a good guy. And this one's all about taking down the Italian mafia, which, that's their narrative device to follow the same story. The mafia members have stands. They find a stand user. They have to stand user finds them, rather. They have to figure out how to beat them, rinse, and repeat. But again, seeing how they beat these stand users with these unique powers, always entertaining. The one thing I will say about part 5 so far, Giorno is probably the only JoJo, the main character, that I'm not really liking. I mean, outside of the first one, Jonathan. But even Jonathan was like the main character of his story. Giorno kind of feels kind of like a side note in his own story here. Like, he's not the main focus of this story, at least not as far as I've watched right now. So that's the only thing I will say about it. But his group, his friends, all of them are amazing. I think this is probably my favorite JoJo group so far. They are all silly, but when it's time to get down and serious, they really do. And they all have each other's back. So I dig it, man. I dig it. But yeah, man. So to recap, part 1, trash. Part 2, watchable. Parts 3, 4, and 5, must see TV. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I am a fan of it. It is indeed bizarre. It is wacky, zany, all of the above. And before I forget, and like I said, the narrative is like really what got me, what surprised me. But honestly, what everyone's gonna tell you, come on, bro. The drip and the music, I mean, just look at the poses. Look at the outfits. My boy Okayasu with that Billions jacket on, bruh. And look at Josuke with that, with the hearts, with the heart. He has a heart shaped, or his jacket's cut in a heart shape. Come on, man. And the music, I mean, you know. I might get copyrighted, but so be it. I'm gonna have this play us out. Thank you for watching me ramble on, but JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a must watch, okay? I'm saying it now. And yeah, let me know, guys. What was your favorite part of JoJo's? Do you agree with me? Do you like 3, 4, and 5? Do you like 1 and 2? Do you love 1 and hate the rest? Let me know, man. And yeah, Stone Ocean, when it comes out, we definitely gonna talk about that too, guys. But until next time, I'm out.